Hello, everyone, and welcome to In the Books, a podcast about period dramas by us two nerds. I'm Michelle. I live in the States. You can find me at Musings on Instagram and Twitter.
And I'm Rita. I live in England. I'm at Annoying Rita on Instagram and Twitter. Welcome to another special book club podcast. Thank you for joining us. So after watching the first season of the Netflix hit show The Empress, we found out that there was a novelisation, and you know us, we just can't get enough of those sweet soup books, especially a tie-in cover with a show. Yes. So we thought we'd hit you with a review of The Empress by Gigi Griffis. This was released on the 27th of September, just 2 days before the show hit Netflix.
Any speed readers out there?
So from what I understood, this book was initially Netflix's idea. They wanted to adapt the Empress creator.
Money. Cash grab.
All about that money. They wanted to adapt the Empress creator, Kaiserin I'm sorry, Katerina, I can't pronounce your names. Her scripts into a standalone novel. So they approached Zando Publishing, who in turn reached out to 5 writers, including Griffis, and got them each to submit a 3,000-word sample, and her editor said that they chose Gigi because she understood Sissy as a dreamer and a lover and a contemporary figure just 200 years ago. So she got the job, and it took her just 20 days to submit her first draft, which is bonkers.
Freaking sane.
I mean, how many pages is that a day? Like, at least 15, right? That's...
Oh, at least.
Crazy. So, Griffis was working from the original script. This is way before the show had finished filming, so some of the details didn't exactly just align. They had to go in and edit the book after seeing a first cut of the first few episodes to try and get the descriptions of dresses or the rooms to match up, and, you know, what was on the show, what we had in mind when reading. You know, you start to notice little discrepancies between what happened on screen and in the book. And I think there could be some moments they edited out of the show that were kept in the book. But before we dive into all the potential scenarios, let's talk more generally about the book itself. Okay, so TV novelizations, new to them. Have you read many in the past?
I seem to recall reading one. I can't put my finger on it, but I seem to remember reading one and suffering my usual, but they didn't do that in the show, and why not? And that kind of thing. And so, this is the first one that I've done in recent years.
Other than Dawson's Creek, which I don't think really counts because a lot of them were... Okay. The Dawson's Creek novels, I read the ones that were like set in the summer between the seasons. It never aligned with the show. It was like reading fanfic. I was like always confused. They were so badly written. I think they sort of put me off novelizations, but the only other one I've read is weirdly a novelization of Casablanca, which was a strange choice for a 12-year-old that had never seen the movie and would not for another 15 years.
It was totally random.
It was so good though. I was like, this is good.
And what did you think of the movie after you finally saw it?
I mean, at that point, I was like, this is a romantic, weird take on World War II. Had to be made by Americans, where they're just like, yeah, and then all of the people of Morocco are getting shot at, but it's fine.
Don't worry about it.
Just worry about Humphrey Bogart and his hat.
Yes, looking at you, sweetheart.
So this isn't really a genre that I read. I mean, fanfic exists. Why would you?
Well, that's half the fun of fanfic
Exactly.
is taking what you've seen on screen or read in a book and sometimes filling in the blanks. That's the fun part.
Love a missing scenes fanfic. That's
Yes.
the content I thrive for. So
Yes.
what did you think of this one overall?
I thought the book was good. I did the audio version, so I was on Audible, and I thought it was really good. I could find myself being swept away just from the descriptions, and having had the series, there as your scene and your actors and all that kind of stuff. You could really just let yourself drift with what was being written. So I really recommend the audiobook. I thought it was great.
For some reason, I decided the audiobook was not for me. So I read it. Well, I had a physical copy.
You read it old school
style.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this book too. I think it has some really well written passages and just like a beautiful prose style.
Yes.
I think it's much better written than it really needed to be, considering this is just an obvious money grab by Netflix where they didn't care about the content.
Yeah.
I think I did struggle with some of the scenes that were just play-by-plays of what we had seen on screen, but that's, again, not the fault of the writing or anything. That's more of just me being impatient. Like, get to the bits that I don't know about. Especially because we got new scenes sprinkled in, and I was like, ooh.
How long is the book?
It's 306 pages.
Oh, so yeah, it's an easy read.
Yeah, I did it in the most part of a night. Just...
Wow, you are a rock star.
I just don't sleep very well.
Oh.
Did you like all the different point of views for each chapter? I mean, we should say, for those of you who have not read the book and are listening to us, A, why? B, the way the novel is set out is there's three perspectives. You've got your chapters that are from Elizabeth's point of view, Franz's, and then Elena's. How did that work in the Audible version?
The Audible version had two performers. They had a man and a woman. And so each of the women's chapters were read by this same actress. But it worked really well. It was nice to have the different tone, the different voice for each one of the characters that kind of helped you keep track of where you were, especially considering, a lot of these chapters were maybe two pages long, the equivalent of just a couple pages. I found it to be really dynamic, and it kept my attention. So you said that you'd tried the audiobook, but it just wasn't for you.
I mean, sometimes I have really short attention span, and I was just like, come on, hurry up. So, does she do different voices for Elizabeth and Helena, or are they like the same?
For that, they were really similar. So, that I didn't find that to be difficult to know when we were in Elizabeth's head and when we were in Helena's head.
They have very distinct personalities, to be fair.
Yeah, they do. I found it interesting that some of the characters wound up speaking as if they were from Yorkshire. And I'm like, wait a second. Okay, you're Bavarian, but you sound like you're from northern England. What?
Yeah, that doesn't no. But I mean, that's why we don't do dubbing in general. It is a bit weird because I did get used to like the German and like the way their voices sound, and then suddenly it's in English. There was a bit of an adjustment period where I was sort of like, okay, the way they talk is obviously slightly different given the language thing. So in the book version, what was really helpful with the point of views is that they have all the different chapters have these little images at the beginning. So Franz had a little sword, Helena had a flower, and of course, Elizabeth had a tiny bird. Tiny bird.
A bird. Isn't that what a surprise?
What?
I know that when I was writing fanfic back in the Poldark days, I would oftentimes write in different POVs from section to section, and so I think that helped me kind of work through the shifts that they had on the audiobook too. I know I had Ross and DeMills's voices all caught up in my head.
Did you ever do Judd's point of view? Would it have been like...
I didn't do Judd, but I remember writing one from Prudy's point of view, I think.
I think Judd would be too hard.
That was a lot of fun.
One thing that the book does that the TV show never made clear is like it gives the years that we're operating in. So we've got 1853 at the beginning, and then right before she leaves for the palace, it's 1854, and I'm like, oh, thank God, can we just get a timeline?
Yeah, because it felt like when we were watching the show, it felt like Franz and gang were leaving, and then the next day, it felt like Elizabeth was going to Vienna. So there wasn't any real clue as to how much time had passed.
I mean, other than the 44 letters, I don't think he could have pulled that off in a week. Yeah. I mean, he's good, but he's not crazy.
Oh, but, they're just lovesick. They probably write down, like, oh, I miss you. Boo-hoo-hoo.
I'm sure that was happening as well. But he's got to have time to sort out his train shit as well, This is just his...
Yeah.
Well,
That's
do you
true.
think being an emperor is his side hustle? His number one job is writing love letters? So is there anything you didn't like about the novel?
Well, I didn't like the fact that, it gets cut off at the wedding because, there was so much more that happens in the show that would have been really great to read on paper. How, the whole, let's go to the hunting lodge. And,
oh my God. The drama of
that
it
would
all.
have been amazing to read or listen to. So, I get that they were in a rush and wanted to get this done before the show debuted. But, I would love it if they continued on for that second half of the story.
You take our money. Take our money.
Yeah.
Right.
Seriously.
If they had done the whole of the series, I mean, we've got most of episode 2 done in 300 pages. There were 6 episodes. That's a very large book. We're talking like Tolkien levels. Potentially too much.
Game of Thronesian?
Yeah, potentially too much for a Netflix TV tie-in,
Yeah, true enough.
And they weren't paying Gigi Griffis enough for this shit. I think, while I definitely enjoyed being in the different point of views in the novel, it was, on the one hand, one of the strengths that you got so inside their heads in scenes where you were previously third person. But when they got to Vienna and Schönbrunn, I'm going to try and pronounce the name of the palace. I'm sorry. When they got to the Schönbrunn for the wedding, in the show it felt like the world really opened up and there were all these new characters and all these new... because everyone has their own agenda they want to play, and
Yeah.
all the games at court. By contrast, I felt like the book didn't take advantage of that and it was a bit stifling.
Mm-hmm.
As I'm saying that, I realise that that's because it's a novel and it's ultimately a love story, I think, and it's focused on the right people for that. And it would have been really fucking weird to have another point of view 2/3 into the way to the story, just be like, hey! But I think one of the strengths of the show is the way that it expanded outside of just Elizabeth and Franz's story, because you've got all these really interesting characters that I don't feel like they took advantage of in the novel, especially like Leontine. Every time she showed up, I was like, you have a whole book in you.
Seriously. And, it's like, she barely does anything, in comparison to, all of the wacky zaniness that's going on with her and her boyfriend, about the revolution.
To the revolution! Yeah. Well, okay. So from, like, Franz's perspective, the revolution always sort of lingers on the back of his chapters, but then when you're in Helena and Elizabeth's chapters, they're so oblivious to this, like, power struggle going on that it sort of feels like unimportant sometimes. Then you're like, no.
Yeah.
Franz is the only one who realizes.
Point. Get a clue, ladies. He's got a lot on his plate.
I really enjoyed all of the allusions to like his PTSD and his snake scar.
Yes.
I think that was really well handled, and like from the very first chapter in his point of view, he's like almost passing out with like sweat, like, and the night terrors and like the intensity of that. I was feeling really bad for him, and then having that be the catalyst for like why he's so obsessed with Elizabeth makes a lot of sense to me psychologically, because he's just like, she doesn't seem very aware of
she is an escapist.
She for some reason, like, the fact that he nearly died barely crosses her mind. She's like
oh, you have a scar. It's like she doesn't go deeper. It's like, girl, go deep in that shit.
No, because she just, her priorities are like going out into the forest, riding her horses, writing poetry.
Yes.
She doesn't think
running
about
the
revolution at any point, and he's just like, please, I need an escape from this unrelenting nonsense.
I gotta have a break sometime.
Yeah. So, favourite scenes. What were some of yours?
For me, one of my favorite scenes was when she first encounters him in the garden. For some reason, that just first experience with one another and how it lingered in their mind. I just loved that.
I also loved that in that moment in the book, she recognizes how kind he's being and gentle he is with his horse, and she's like, oh, that's nice. Especially because she's just lost Puck. It does make sense. They both love horses. Like, they would connect.
They both love horses, and as we discover in the book, they both love poetry.
We got an extra scene between them later on that's not in the show. I wonder if it was in the show's original script, because it's not very long.
No.
Wouldn't that have been
It would have been lovely.
What is on the cutting room floor? Show us these scenes. My favourite scene was actually when we were in Elena's point of view at Maxie's party, and Elizabeth just accused her of being like their mother.
Yes. Oh, cut like a knife.
Elena's perspective was like probably my favourite thing about the novel. Was just, it was interesting being inside her head at that moment, and it's such a powerful moment because she realizes that all of her hurt was caused not by Elizabeth but by her mother and Sophie, the way that they tried and get her to conform to societal standards and selling her this dream of Franz's love that was just never even going to happen. She was told is that she, got in line and behaved a certain way and followed all of their rules, she would finally feel the sort of love and affection that she's never had from her family before. Definitely not from her mother.
Yeah.
And when that didn't happen, and worse still, when Elizabeth just sort of lucks into being the figure of affection for Franz, who she's been like desperately longing for, I think that caused her to sort of blame Elizabeth, and then in the novel, she just suddenly realizes oh, it's not Elizabeth's fault that
it's not Elizabeth's fault. She just happened to be there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that really clarified for me what was going on with Elena's storyline in the show in a way that I hadn't really thought about before, because there's 10,000 other storylines, But the way Sophie and Ludovica were just sort of playing out their past traumas with Elena and Franz, trying to just try a better version of what they went through when they were kids and they were forced into an arranged marriage with these men they didn't love.
Yeah.
You have the tools that you have, and they were brought up a certain way. I think Elena really blames them for doing this to her, but I have a lot of sympathy for the fact that they probably just didn't really realize that they didn't have to do this, because generations upon generations of these political matches have happened. It didn't really occur to them that this might not be the best things for their children. And I got really great insight into that being inside Helena's head at that moment. But I also wanted to be Helena, look at the bigger picture here.
Yeah, that section of the book was really beautifully done in showing her the gear shift that she makes. It was really lovely.
Do you think being inside her head makes it make more sense than in the show? Because, like I said, it's a quick turnaround.
I didn't quite understand why she made that sudden turnaround. I thought that the way that they went into the logic behind that really helped me understand kind of what all was going on. Not to say that the actress who was playing Helena didn't do a good job. She did. But, I think that, within the written word and within a book or an audiobook for that matter, you're obviously going to wind up having more context than you will on screen.
Definitely. Yeah.
And so, I think that if they'd had more time to kind of help develop and shape that frame of where she was, the process that she was going through, I think it would have been wonderful. But they didn't have the time.
Yeah, they had a lot to stuff into those 6 episodes and lots of characters. It was still a powerful moment, but I think reading the novelization really enhances the show in a way, for this plot at least. Actually, one of my favorite quotes from the novel was from Helena's point of view. She said, Elena's heart was like a spilled glass, soaking through her and spreading so much farther than she realized. She hadn't scrubbed it out right away, and now it had set a deep red stain on her soul. And I was like, oh shit, this is a great analogy. I mean, the whole novel is written brilliantly, but for some reason, Helena's sections were really quite powerful. I guess because of the intense emotion. She was, as soon as some of her delusional daydreams about friends falling in love with her, I was a bit like, oh god. But then again, that's
so pretty.
You were you get to realize just how far down the imaginary road she had got in her head.
Yep.
And then that sort of justified her intense hurt later. but it's just very powerfully written. Any other favourite quotes? Did you find any? Although it's harder with an audiobook.
That is one of the disadvantages of the audiobook. It's difficult to be able to pick out quotes unless you grab a pen and write down, okay, this was in chapter 41 at 3 minutes and 47 seconds. That's where it starts, But I don't know anybody who would do that.
Not you.
I certainly wouldn't.
Yeah.
But yeah. That's why I think I'm going to get the book so that I can reread it. Yeah, and I'm going to reread it.
Yeah.
Because I enjoyed it that much,
I think it would be good to reread before season 2 starts, just to sort of get.
Oh yeah.
That's a suggestion in my head to myself for whenever season 2 comes out.
Yeah, and we haven't gotten any inkling from Netflix on that, have we?
No, I don't think they've started filming, so that would be hard.
Well, I seem to recall that the actress who plays Elizabeth, she shaved her hair off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of her, at various different events and things like that. And
she looks amazing, by the way. What a choice!
Oh my god,
jealous.
I know.
Well, she's got the bone structure.
And it was one of those things. Like, okay, where did you come from? Because you are freaking awesome.
Germany is the answer.
Well, yeah. Yeah, she was fantastic.
They can put her in a wig. Oh my god, though.
I have to wonder, did she do that in order to make the wigs and stuff look more realistic?
I don't think so, because I've seen photos of they did press shoots for the show while they were filming, and she had just a modern haircut at at
Oh,
and
okay.
with a fringe as well. So she was definitely in a wig. She was in a wig for the show. And by the way, that wig is better than anything on Bridgerton. I'm just...
Oh my god.
Netflix, who you hire for Bridgerton makes no sense to me.
Yeah, the costuming for this show is just exquisite. You see these gowns with, I think there was a description of one of the gowns that she was putting on. It was 3 times, the bottom was 3 times what she used to.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
I can understand that. It was a fucking huge dress.
Yeah. Oh, it was when they were getting her dressed for the party.
Yeah.
They were talking about that. But yeah, it was, I love this show. I love this book.
Another favourite moment for me in the novel was Elizabeth describing Sophie entering a room. I've written down this quote. Here was a woman who took up space in a way Elizabeth had only ever seen men do. I was like... but I thought that was just so incredibly insightful and just a great turn of phrase, because I think it really captures the way Sophie holds herself. She's not really a very important figure in the novelisation, which is kind of low-key annoying, apart from obviously Franz is my mummy, but for the most part she doesn't play a huge role. But the little moments, the little nuggets you get of Sophie, she's just such an imposing figure, and I like the analysis of her as being sort of masculine in the way people perceive her. I don't know if for all intents and purposes, she's a very feminine figure, because she's a mother and religious, and she wears all these very traditional dresses compared to everyone else. But her rigidity and her sort of no-nonsense entrance to rooms and things just make her immediately a figure that you look at and you respect.
Right. And you say to yourself, I am not going to piss her off. Yeah, she has an aura about her.
That actress is amazing as well. I wonder if this is something that was in the script or something that the actress brought to screen, that the author was like, I need to write this down because this is a bad bitch entering the room.
I need to make sure that I bring that across.
Yeah.
She was incredible. I think the actor that played Franz was incredible. Maxie.
Oh, Maxie. This is another thing. I always called him Max, and then I read the book, and now in my head he's Maxie.
Now he's Maxie, yes. I think he was terrific, and you had to know that he had a ball with that role.
Also, some of his outfits at the beginning were like Playboy, just man about town in silly sunglasses, just absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I guess in terms of the book versus the show, there were some noticeable differences that happened. I mean,
well, one of the big ones is the night before the wedding.
Of course.
In the book, Helena, who, she has had her reconciliation with Elizabeth, and Elizabeth is really just wanting to see Franz because she has undergone that horrible examination, and she just needed to be with him, to talk to him, to tell him what happened, and that didn't go very well. So she was upset. So Elena said that she knew where Franz's room was because
she's been snakes.
Her
whole eavesdropping plot, by the way, was like very creepy. There's this moment where Helena listens to Maxie doing one of his pretend speeches where he's practicing getting Elizabeth to love him. He's like going to make this grand speech, and Elena's just like, oh my god, what a loser. He's just like, yeah.
I mean, I really love how these characters are portrayed, and having them in my head as I was reading, that's always enjoyable. You can have a little puppet show in your head going. But as far as any other differences go, that was the main one that I recall.
I think that's like the major plot shift, is that they quote unquote consummate their marriage before the marriage.
Right.
So that when they're having the wedding, they're like, blah, 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 we're so in love. Like, oh, everything's great. It's much more like of a romance novel ending compared to the TV show, which has like 4 more episodes to deal with. I think another major shift was Max's role in general. He's introduced earlier in the novel because he's like fencing Franz constantly. I think they have like 2 different fencing scenes. And he's living at the palace, which doesn't make any sense because he's supposed to be out visiting the realms or something, but whatever. And his whole relationship with Franz, I think, is much more antagonistic than we got in the TV show. I think at least that was my takeaway from it. Some other other changes. I mean, you get some extra Franz Elizabeth scenes. Like, I think my favourite one was when they ran into each other in the garden again the second time, and they were quoting Longfellow poems at each other. I was like, this is too cute.
Oh, God.
I would love...
They're all wacky kids.
I would love it if we got some more Franz quoting poetry. I can imagine him doing it, but like...
Me too.
maybe that was in the script, but I think that would have been like a perfect encapsulation as to why she fancies him. We get a little bit of like what happens between the engagement and the wedding, like a tiny amount. I could have done with some more, to be completely honest. But there's like this really funny scene with Elizabeth and her father. They're traveling to the palace and they stop in some woodlands, and he jokes about her taking a piss. It's like, that's the last time you're taking a piss in the woods. And she's like, a piss in the woods, your highness. So that was cute.
Yeah. I think that the relationship that she has with her father isn't as awful and creepy in the book as it was, at least to me, in the show. He's having these orgies in the house, and then he's like running around in the fountain during the wedding. Basically just making an ass out of himself. He's the worst.
He's somehow worse than Max to me in my head.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's because like it's so clearly completely fucked up Ludovica. Like, Max at least isn't married.
True.
His messiness has very little repercussions.
Yeah, that's true.
I did find it a little bit creepy when we're in Elizabeth's head and she was just like, yeah, I'm used to this. I'm like, this should not be like normalized behavior that you're seeing your dad with 3 naked women. Like, that's just,
yeah.
I think the fact that she's just chill with it is what's creepy. That's the problem.
Yeah.
There is the sense that like her mother is slightly more ridiculous. I feel like she was like more fleshed out in the TV show, the mother figure. Like there was some pathos to her screeching.
Yes.
I also think like,
she's a piece of work.
Her family is insane, and there's also the figure of Spats as well, who is like on screen for maybe 10 seconds in the TV show, and she's like she like goes to the wedding, which is very much not something that happens in the show, and you definitely get a sense of Elizabeth as a big sister more, and she's like, I want the best for you too, Spats. By the way, Spats is an insane name. These
Spats. I mean, good grief.
What's her name? Sissy, and what's Elena's, like, Nini? Pretty sure it's something ridiculous.
Yeah, it's like Nini. What would Spats' name be?
I can't.
Or is that her nickname?
Yeah, that's probably her nickname.
That's gotta be her nickname.
That's not a name.
No one would be that evil.
I'm sure we could Google this, but we're not gonna. I think another thing I really picked up on, Franz in the novel explicitly discusses how Elizabeth's letters have spanned on like this confidence in him as a leader, and how he has all these plans that he is conjuring up with the trains, and he's like, oh, I can't wait to tell her, and he like dangles the train, just so dorky, and I was like, I love this for him. He's such a nerd. He loves his trains. But I find that to be a bit different from at least how I perceived him in the show. Like, I thought he was a lot more self-assured as a leader.
Yeah.
Which I think makes more sense given the events that happens later in the show. He's very much like, bitch, let me handle this, to his mother. And I think it makes more sense sort of to me, the way the show handled it. Because I think if his self-confidence is purely based on Elizabeth, then that's tragic. That's toxic. Don't do that, hon. And then he's gonna crumble immediately. My poor baby Franz.
He must be protected.
I guess also, like, because it's so focused on the love triangle, there's like really no plot about the revolution. There's no,
Yeah.
there's a little bit of the Russian thing. I mean, even like Louisa, the bad chick, was like barely a thing. Like, it was like 2 pages and she's gone.
Exactly.
Like all of those subplots kind of minimized. I think like the one that I was kind of sad about the most was the straw doll, because I was like,
yeah,
that's the one thing I got right. Like, can we keep that in?
No, that would have been great.
This show did a lot when you think about it, like all the subplots.
Oh yeah,
all that was going on
and they were decent subplots. You know, they weren't just things that were thrown in to take up time.
Shout out to her editor, because you made a mistake.
No.
So on page 74, if you have the book version, obviously this does not help you. If you are listening on Audible, that's useless to you.
Yeah.
But when Max arrives to whatever the name of their holiday place, Bad Ischl, I think. Yeah. Oh my god, they just plucked that from the ether. When Max arrives there, with his Italian countess, question mark, in the book, he's sort of like greeting his mother, and then coming down the stairs is little Lutzy Wootsy, who we all know, and then also a fourth brother that did not exist in the TV show. And he's mentioned coming down the stairs and then never seen again in the novel. So maybe a mistake. But I wonder if they were planning on having Carl Ludwig, that's the name of the real brother, being in the show, and then they got rid of him in the script, and then like, this is the only sign of life that we have left, was that they were going, because Carl's kind of a weird figure. In real life, he used to write Sissy like little love notes. Like he had like an actual ongoing crush with her when they were like children.
Oh wow.
Because remember, everyone's cousins.
Yeah. I know, right? You guys need some fresh blood.
When Helena's like, my aunt and my mother, and also my mother-in-law. It's too confusing, because she's like saying hello to her aunt, but also trying to impress her mother-in-law. It's just like, oh. So, themes that carried over from the show. I mean, obviously birds.
Birds. Lots of
just
birds.
Everywhere.
There were birds all over the place.
It was constant, especially with like the poetry. All the quotes were like bird imagery from her poetry. And then all the other poems that were quoted as well. Lots of poetry in general.
Yeah. I
find the poetry quite tedious sometimes, because the taste does not align with my own. And also, like, she'll be like, I composed a poem, and then we only get like 4 lines, so it's less impressive.
Yeah.
To be quite honest. Like, I'd be more impressed with a haiku at this point. I mean, that requires skill. But I do like, you have to acknowledge that there's a real vision here, and there's a lot of intent going on. Like, if the author was able to pick up on this from just the script before they'd even shot the show, then this must have been something that was in the script, and it's followed throughout the series, and we picked up on it, so...
We got it.
Job done. You did it. You did it perfectly.
Metaphor received. Thank you.
Thank you.
The 54th time. Okay, we got it.
I think it worked slightly better in a novel, because she sort of snuck it in linguistically rather than just like constantly seeing birds everywhere.
Yeah.
As someone who is not a fan of birds, this has not been my favourite.
Oh, you survived.
I just find birds a bit menacing, you know? I mean, maybe that's the point. Maybe that is the point. There you go. But still, ugh.
See, I love crows and Ravens, yeah.
I feel like they could stare into your soul. I think maybe I watched The Birds when I was too young. Potentially this is it. I also was attacked by poultry at a very young age.
Oh,
but
gosh.
I think I was like 3.
Oh, God.
And I was left near
Was
very
it
aggressive.
Was it a chicken or a turkey?
It was a chicken, but it was like a cock.
Oh.
So it was
okay.
Very flappy and aggressive. I think just on some subliminal.
Flappy and aggressive.
Well, they actually started pecking me. So the story is that, like, I was left alone with my family's chickens, because apparently everyone has chickens in Portugal. They found me huddled on the ground, covering my head while they attacked me.
Oh, no.
And that's why I've never been a successful vegetarian, because I resent the chicken.
Yeah, you try to do me in, so fine. Become
like,
my
if you're
lunch.
Gonna be that way, I'm gonna have some eggs for breakfast.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Oh my god. Oh. Okay. How did we get on to birds? Right, we were talking about
birds.
The theme.
I don't think there was much scope for other themes to be introduced that we got in the show again, because it was it was basically just the first 2 episodes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And other than maybe again the legacy of your mother's past trauma being played out again. But then again, that's not really something that you pick up on at all, because all these kids are completely unaware. They're so... They're in their own heads. They're just thinking about themselves, and they're like, my mummy is so unfair to me. That they can't really think about the wider scope of, hey, maybe your parents went through this as well.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll grow up. But for the most part, did you feel like the internal dialogue was true to what we saw on screen?
Yeah, I think that they did a great job. I love having that inner dialogue to go along with the show, because that helps to fully flesh out the characters and the situation that is happening in that moment. So yeah, I think that the writer did a fantastic job of integrating what she had written into what we see on film. Yeah, I'm totally impressed.
I was very impressed by Helena, especially because, I think that was the character I had the most, not trouble getting inside her head, but just, I wasn't as familiar with, because Elizabeth, I feel like instantly you know who Elizabeth is.
Yeah.
She's that girl. I think what was surprising to me, was just how incredibly traumatized Franz was. I didn't realize that until much later into the show. And also, his perspective on Mac in the novel was, very different from how I thought it was. Because in the show, he definitely goes on, a journey of, by the end of it, he fucking can't stand Max, and neither can I. And at the beginning, I think we both initially thought he was being very naive in his interactions with Max.
Yeah.
And now I think the book and the show kind of, much more so in the book, I think, makes it very clear that he was just trying to get Max to stop misbehaving. So he's sort of giving him a little, giving him the carrot instead of the stick.
Yeah.
Come on, get in line.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I remember in the book how Franz was just, kind of disgusted seeing his brother, flirting around with another woman, after, he just learned that...
Wait, he sees his brother having sex. He actually... That's just come back to me in a horrible flashback. Ugh.
And, Franz is like, damn it, I just told him about these two women who he has messed around with, and one of them is dead, and the other one is crazy. And 30 minutes later, he is stooping someone else. Yeah, Max is
He's a piece
a
of
dog.
work.
He's a dog.
I think, in some ways, Elizabeth was sort of like the match that lit the fuse that was already there with their rivalry.
Yeah, because Max didn't get Elizabeth, and so that's probably the straw that broke his back.
Oh, for sure. But then also the book also mentioned that he wanted to sleep with Bear Chick, which was
yes, that's right.
Not surprising, but also I was like, oh, then why is he upset about Elizabeth? This has happened before. But then maybe that would make the Elizabeth situation worse because he's imagined that he's in love with her.
Yeah.
Like, based on absolutely, like, he met her once. Like, calm down, Max.
Right.
But I think, like, also, like, there's ebbs and flows with, like, especially sibling dynamics because you have known them your whole life, and obviously, like, in the show, there's like, they imply a lot that they were quite close as children, and like, God, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I would like to see more of their relationship, even though I'm like, but then Max has to be back. Oh. But it is interesting, to think like I know we think Sophie's probably at the heart of the problem between them. But then I'm always like, guys, you can, choose not to make Sophie the center of your whole world.
Right. Right.
I know she's your mummy, but you do have to grow up at some point. Like, well, what are they going to do when she's not around? Just, like, wander around the palace in their bedclothes shouting, Mummy!
Mother!
There is something very Norman Bates about this whole...
Oh, yeah.
So, how did you feel about the ending being so incredibly different from the show tonally?
At first I was annoyed.
That it ended at all. You were just like, no.
At first I was annoyed, because there is so much that goes on to happen after that. But I also know that trying to get a book out that covers basically 3 episodes, because the wedding is on the 3rd episode, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So, like,
it's like
two,
the first
two
5
and
minutes.
A bit. Yeah, 2 and a bit from a movie is going to be a hard thing to do. And so I think that, they were able to get out what they could given the timeline. But, really kind of irritating.
I felt like cutting it off there, like, takes the exact same material, but then puts a really positive, happy spin on it. Like,
yes. They all lived happily ever after.
Yeah. I think it's like...
It's like, no, they didn't.
The end of the movie, it's like the couple have a big reconciliation and they get married and everything's happy and yay.
Right.
But we know that actually that's the exact ending of the Sissy movie. Actually, now that I think about it. So maybe
really?
That's why she did it. Yeah, because the last shot is of their wedding.
I still need to watch that.
Haven't seen the sequels. Can someone please, like, show me how to do that? I would love to know. I think it just feels very different from the TV show, like in tone, because the show has slightly more of a pessimistic take, I think.
Yeah.
There's more nuance, and maybe I'm in a pessimistic place, but the romance novel ending just made me like go, oh, but that's not true.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot more friction in the air. In the show, because if you even remember the scene where she is going to the church and she's in the glass carriage.
Yeah, that's deeply sad.
First of all, how in the hell does that thing actually move and not shatter?
Well, obviously it did, because they made it so it, like, for the TV show, and we saw it moving.
It's crazy. They must have had like
so heavy as well.
Yeah, like super tempered glass and all that stuff. But anyway, when she is leaving in that carriage, and all of the people are like moving in to try and see her, and she gets this panicked look on her face.
I still get such anxiety.
Mm-hmm. And, I think one of the things that we haven't talked about was that horrible examination that she winds up having, and the next day, well, of course, she and Franz consummate their engagement.
Well, if you think about it, in the book, she's having sex with Franz that night.
Yeah.
Like, that seems very unlikely to me. Like, that would not happen.
Yeah, that would be difficult. Yeah, it was. What just popped into my head? In Wizard of Oz, when they wake up from the poppy field and they wind up like doing their little jiggy walk up to the Emerald City gate, and the song, "You're out of the woods, you're out of the dark, you're out of the night," that just popped into my head.
That's the ending of this book.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, and they all live happily ever after, which, we all know is bullshit.
Yeah. I think it's just because the show is so, like, if we had read the book first, we'd maybe feel differently, but the show had gone out of its way to sort of dismantle all of the myths and get into, like, the real, well, quote unquote real, a lot of it did not happen.
Yeah.
But into some kind of, at least, psychological truth about what the reality of being an empress is like. And then the book just sort of abruptly ending there makes it seem like it's going to be fine. She'll just get used to it.
Yeah, everything's just going to be great from now on.
And that, I think, is the opposite of the message from the show. When you think about how the show ended, which was it was so much darker, it just feels really weird that this is an adaptation of a script, but it seems like they have two contrasting messages when you think about it.
So I guess in the end, we liked the book.
Yes.
Quite a lot.
Yes.
But also recognize some of the things that are either missing from the book, the thinking that it would be slightly darker, and not wind up having this like 180-degree whiplash turnaround when it was wedding day.
We usually ask at the end of book club, like, do you prefer the book or the TV show? And I think this is one of those rare occasions where I think I'm going to say TV show, because as much as I think this is a really well-written novel, like I said, it's probably written a little bit too well, given what it is. I think the scope of this novelisation doesn't allow for some of the more interesting aspects of the show that, like, really hooked us in. Like, we loved her relationship with Leontine, and all of the plotting, and Sophie's weird, complicated sexual history and all her exes. Even Max, as much as we hate him, was like a fascinating aspect, and like all the subplots, I think, really enhanced the story, and also fed into what was going on with Elizabeth and Franz. And I think when you take away some of those aspects, it's just not as satisfying for me, which is weird, because I love a romance novel, you know me, but
Oh, honey, me too. That's why we get along so well. But no, I would agree with you. the story arcs that all of the characters have, where they end up at the end of the series. It's grittier than what the book portrays. That said, I would probably think about this book in the future as a not necessarily alternative universe fic, but, a how would it be if things went this way, which is basically an alternative universe, Michelle. So it's an AU. It's an AU
very
fic.
minor change to the...
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I agree. I think, once the series develops and, it's probably going to get darker if you think about it.
Oh, yeah.
We might like the novel even more because we'll be like, let's go back into the happy place where before all of the shit,
yes.
We enjoyed it, but it has its context, shall we say.
Yes.
Okay, inbox section. Let's do this.
Hi, Rita and Michelle. I am enjoying the book version of The Empress more than I was expecting. I'm still reading it, but I thought I would chime in with what I think thus far. I mean, I love the series, as I have gushed over in several emails to you, but found the book thus far complementing the series. I really like the way we hear the thoughts of the main characters, and it gives more rounded, richer exploration of their personalities and backstories. All of the relationships, Elizabeth and Helena, Elizabeth and Franz, even Max's with everyone.
Even that nameless gal that he's screwing.
He's stupid. They all seem more developed and gave them a bit more depth, and the reader can see how and what motivated each of them. Also, the extra book scenes were used to help connect some of the TV scenes, I think, to good effect. However, they could have done with a bit more historical background. Perhaps they should have called Rita. Winky emoji face.
I'm not sure about
that. I know it's not supposed to be high literature, but I enjoyed it. But I love the TV series more. I guess because it had the extra elements, dimensions of beautiful scenery, gorgeous costumes, and lovely music, and some outstanding acting. Who doesn't love watching Max explode with rage and Sophie cutting people down with her words, and Franz and his beautiful eyelashes? I mean, really.
He has beautiful eyelashes, man.
He does. Gotta go. I'm off to finish the book before your podcast. Until next time, ciao from Maria in Australia. And she sent us a second email. Just finished the book. I didn't realize it would end with the wedding. I wondered how they were going to fit the entire series in. Silly me. I guess they ended it with hope and positivity, but little do they know. On reflection, I wondered what was the point of the book, and I'm thinking it was really was about setting up the foundations of the relationship at the heart of the story. Quite simply, little delicate bird Elizabeth spreading her wings to fly to her prince, the sun in her galaxy of stars. However, the journey forward may prove perilous to such a delicate creature, as Icarus comes to mind. You hope her wings will not melt. Until next time, ciao, Maria.
Wow.
Maria, that was poetic.
Very poetically put.
That was great.
She should do our job. That would be...
honestly.
make more sense.
Honestly.
Okay.
That was gorgeous.
So, we've reached the end of this very special book club episode. You're probably, sick of us by this point. And that's a wrap for season 1 of The Empress. We hope to be back eventually covering season 2. When?
Yes.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
In the meantime, we'll be discussing more wonderful period dramas, so keep your eyes on social media for announcements on what we are watching next. As always, you can contact us at inthebooksnetwork@gmail.com about pretty much anything. period drama related. Like, don't ask us for like recipes or anything. I can't help you. If you like our podcast, please tell your friends and rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to them, really. Thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, bye.
Bye.